a really miffed Cristiano Ronaldo looked at the Coke bottles on his press conference table and just swiped it away. What happened after that was quite insane. Coca Cola's market valuation dropped by $4 billion. But Coca Cola's market valuation was still over $200 million. That's the power of this corporation. On today's episode, we continue our corporation spotlight with me and Ronnie speaking about two very, very famous companies and their origin stories. Hello. My name is Savant.
Hey, what happened to the third hello?
Hey, I'll tell you. First, you finish your introduction and then I'll tell you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ronnie. Welcome to Surface Scratchers.
So what happened is, I realized that the hello, I subliminally have copied someone. So there is this one YouTuber who I follow. Okay, he is a reaction channel, and this struck me like this week. Okay, I was watching one of his videos, and he goes like hello, welcome back to the channel. And here I'm, every day, every episode, I've been saying hello. It's not fair. So the moment I realized it, my conscience got the better of me, and now I've changed the hello to hello.
Okay, okay, but imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Who's this guy? Is it someone worth following?
I don't know. I don't want to talk about him because then you guys will judge me. He's this Pakistani dude who reviews like Indian Desi hip hop videos. So I am going to keep the name to myself. But yeah.
There aren't too many of them. I'm sure smart listeners will figure out who this guy is.
So, guys, welcome to another episode of Surface Scratchers. This episode is continuing our segments where we spotlight certain corporations. Episode 6, was it, Ronnie? Was when we did McDonald's. And we spoke about the crazy origin story of how Raymond Kroc took that corporation to the absolute next level to what it is today. Today, Ronnie and I will be doing two beverage companies.
But before we get there, shout out to our YouTube channel. Self plugging over here. There's something that we're really proud of, dear listeners. So in case podcast apps are something that don't really work for you, we are available on YouTube as well.
Yes.
All of our new episodes will simultaneously almost launch on YouTube. We're working to get our past episodes there as well. So
Okay, over to you, buddy.
right. Hey, so I'm talking about the company that I've chosen rather is something called Krating Dang. Have you heard of Krating Dang?
No, man.
Okay. So we'll figure out what Krating Dang is in a minute or so. So I'll take you back, Savanth,
Hmm.
to the 1960s in Thailand, where there's this guy called Chalayo Yuvidya,
Okay.
who's chap born to a rather poor farming family who raises ducks and all of that. He has a few stints as a bus driver, things like that, and then finally, lands a job in a pharmaceutical company that I think is run by his brother. Amasses some money and starts a pharma company of his own.
Hmm.
Soon he realizes that the energy drink market in Thailand is rather untapped.
Okay.
There are no local energy drinks, no Thai origin energy drinks. All energy drinks are imported. These drinks are targeted towards the rich, so they're a premium brand.
Okay.
So what he decides to do, using a little bit of pharmacy chemical knowledge that he has, develops a drink called and calls it Krating Dang,
Okay.
which is locally made, and he targets it towards the working masses, farmers and people who are lifting loads, and the guys who actually need energy to function. And I'm not trying to demean programmers and students trying to submit projects uh, working late into the night, but so this is what he does, and makes this thing taste a little sweet. All other energy drinks in Thailand were somewhat medicinal tasting type thing. And to, showcase that this one is a proper energy brand, he puts the logo of a yellow colored sun,
Uh huh.
symbolizing energy, radiating energy,
Suvarna. I'm
whatever,
sure it's called that in Thai.
probably, and two animals called a gaur or a Indian bison charging
Hmm.
at you. You can think of them as cows or bulls that go to the gym, really ripped
Bunch of ripped guys.
guys. Yes. So as you would have figured out, this Krating is red in Thai, and Dang is the name for the gore.
Oh, damn.
Right. So in 1976, this is when this guy launches Krating Dang in Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes a hit almost immediately because this lower strata of society, or
Hmm.
economical brand did not exist in the energy drink market, and like the brand that it became later on, which we know as Red Bull, he starts sponsoring athletic events like Muay Thai and all of that.
Ah,
It
okay.
becomes a big thing. So Krating Dang is something that's still available and pretty popular in Asia. I had it quite a few times when I visited Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice golden colored funky bottle. But that's not the story we are here for today. We are here for how this brand became Red Bull as we know it today.
Yes.
So enter this Austrian businessman who's the international marketing director of a toothpaste company called Blendax or something like that.
Okay.
He comes to visit Thailand. His name is Dieter Mateschitz. On a business trip to Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
trying to sell toothpaste, he lands and then and severely jet lagged. Someone suggests that he should have Krating Dang, or one can of Krating Dang,
Mm-hmm.
gets his jet lag to fly away. So he's become a huge fan, and it's said that every day he was gulping down 7-8 cans of Krating Dang. He, on his way back to Europe, he bought a ton of this Krating Dang and tried to sell it to people in Europe and tried to get them to market it or whatever. No one really took on to that because the energy drink market as such did not exist after that.
Okay.
So Dieter does not give up. He raises about $500,000, comes back to Thailand, and convinces our old friend Chalayo Yuvidya
Okay.
and tells him, "Ki, you sell me 49% of the stake in your company.
Mm-hmm.
I will market this drink in the rest of the world essentially." So now Dieter takes back this drink to Europe and tries
Mm-hmm.
launching it in Austria.
Austria.
Austria is where he is from. Yeah. Right. So what does he do over here? He changes the entire, modus operandi or the marketing strategy. He sells it at nearly 2.5 times the price of the competition. So it's a premium drink right now.
Okay.
He does not target it towards, the working class or the masses like that. It's towards the young crowd, the party going college crowd or whatever. The original Krating Dang is not a fizzy drink. Huh? It's a
Hmm.
medicinal
It's
tonic.
like a tonic.
This fell, huh. So this guy makes it a fizzy drink and calls it Red Bull. Red gore would have been a little weird. I guess people wouldn't know what a gore is. But huh. So this guy launches Red Bull, and the marketing strategy he used in 1987 is kind of, so the launch happened in 1987. So the marketing strategy he used, and which is what I tip my hat to him, is what they use even now. Like
Mm-hmm.
you see these Red Bull cars and
Yeah. Yeah.
people coming to college fests and all of that. No?
Yes.
He did that in Austria. Apparently, got the, probably uh, the party center student dorms or whatever to give away Red Bulls in their parties that they're having in the college dorms,
Huh.
and outside clubs and all of that. What he'd do is litter empty cans of Red Bull
Oh.
on the roads and all of that to get people to think that it's selling like crazy and everyone's drinking uh, Red Bull. Bartenders, everyone started making drinks out of it. And within the first year of
Mm-hmm.
sales, only in Austria, they sell 1 million cans.
Wow.
So immense push behind marketing, and that is the reason why Red Bull's so successful. Even today, these guys don't manufacture the drink. I don't think they do much in the way of distribution either.
Okay.
It's purely a marketing company. They make about 6 billion euros a year in sales. A third of that is spent in marketing.
Wow.
Other companies like Pepsi, Coke apparently
Much
use
lesser.
maybe
Hmm.
single digit, yeah, 5-7%, etc. So a third of the 6 billion euros are spent towards marketing, and they've got a 43% global market share in the energy drink market.
Wow.
So this guy taking Krating Dang, bringing it to Europe, and now they're present all over the world. Some Asian markets have both.
Kratendang and Red Bull.
So Red Bull caters towards the party-going crowd or whatever. Krating Dang is for the entry-level type
Whenever we used to have these university sports competitions, right? There would always be like a Red Bull vehicle that would be parked outside the
Correct.
campus, and these really attractive college girls would be called the Red Bull girls would come and give you samples. Okay, so
Huh.
and they would always make it a point to open it and give it to you, so that you don't take it
Right.
back and sell it and all. And then after that, you had an option of buying it. And because of these really attractive girls, all these Bondu boys who are just after football would spend like 100 bucks on each Red Bull can.
Red Bull again is really, really popular, not just as a drink, but as a sports behemoth.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So
Especially your favorite sport.
no, they're there everywhere, bro. I was just looking this up. They are present across, I think, 70 plus sports where they have athletes that they sponsor. Huh? Everything from sailing, surfing. You go to their corporate website, they've very
Uh huh.
neatly divided the stuff that they do in sports. Huh? So they own teams, they conduct events, they
Hmm.
sponsor athletes, and they have a media company wing. So the
Wow.
teams they own, they have the Red Bull and the Alpha Tauri Formula One teams. Football, they've got teams in I think all continents. Huh? They got
Really?
yeah, pretty much. I don't know if there's one in Asia, but there's definitely one in South America. I think Red Bull Brazil or something. Leipzig in Germany, Red Bull Salzburg in Austria, New York Red Bulls uh,
Oh, of course.
in the US.
Completely forgot about them.
Yeah, they've got an ice hockey team, something in sailing, surfing, rallycross.
At least they have such a sporty name that they seamlessly blend into sports.
So, coming back, sports teams, they have teams in Formula One, football, ice hockey, blah, blah, blah. They have events that they sponsor in Formula One, rallycross. Those are conventional sports. Apart from that, esports, dancing is something they do, and even, Rubik's Cube solving competitions. They sponsor athletes across 70 countries participating in 75 plus sports.
Okay.
KL Rahul, Gurpreet Singh Sandhu, Jihan Darola, etc. from India. They have an athlete performance center where these people can go and I think figure out how they're doing, how their actions are and all of that, and tweak that to improve that and make marginal gains for that. Uh, they have Red Bull TV, Red Bull Radio, Red Bull Bulletin magazine, and a bunch of other things like an apparel line, which is Alpha Tauri, a travel agency, a career guidance website, and whatnot.
It's not just that one iconic small fridge at a retailer. It's much,
Yeah,
much bigger than that.
yeah, but again, I think this is in an effort to diversify sources of revenue, see if they can
Yes.
go beyond just the energy drink thing. But what stands out for me is again, the effort in just marketing that product. Apparently, costs Red Bull 9 cents to make
Hmm.
the can of Red Bull, but they sell it at $3-4 or whatever. So all of
Lovely.
that is just marketing. They don't do anything in manufacturing. Most of distribution's not with them, but they built an iconic brand.
Yes. So from one iconic brand, Ronnie, let's move on to the other one. This brand, if you think Red Bull is big, this brand is valued at $240 billion. Possibly it is the second most valued brand in the world, right behind Nike. It is Coca-Cola. Everyone's had it. Okay, so everyone knows about it, everyone's tasted it. Apparently 94% of the world has tasted Coca-Cola. That's how big they are.
Wow.
So the origin story is very cool. So the story is about this pharmacist turned war veteran who went by the name of John Pemberton. Okay, he was born in Georgia. I think he was born in a town called Rome, Georgia, interestingly.
Oh,
So
nice.
at age 19, he got the license to practice Thomsonian medicine, which is like quack herbalism. So they usually make these things called patent medicines, which is pseudoscience, doesn't work mostly, but yeah. But few years later, he did graduate in a degree of pharmacy to his credit. Then what happened is he was called and summoned for the Civil War. Okay, I'm presuming he was on the side of the Southerners because he's from Georgia. But
Mm-hmm.
at the Civil War, apparently he got shot, almost was going to die, got a dose of morphine, miraculously survived, loved the morphine to the extent that he got addicted to it.
Ouch.
Okay. Throughout post war till 1885, he was on and off morphine. He was really looking for a substitute of morphine because it was really affecting him.
Mm-hmm.
So he had this drugstore called the Pemberton's Eagle Drug and Chemical House, okay, where in 1885 he registered something called the Pemberton's French Wine Coca. Pemberton's French Wine Coca Nerve Tonic, rather. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This was basically a kind of a spin-off of this wine that he had called Vin Mariani, which is a French coca wine. So what's in a French coca wine, Ron? It's basically wine and coca extract. And what comes from coca extract?
Chocolate.
That's what Escobar calls it, but yeah. The original Coca-Cola did have wine and cocaine. Okay. Additionally, he added something called the kola nut. Kola nut is this one nut mostly found in African rainforests, which is a really strong source of caffeine.
Okay.
He made this cool concoction, really helped him wane off morphine. So that was proof enough. But he started claiming it as a cure for many diseases like morphine addiction, indigestion, nerve disorders, even impotence.
Not jet lag though, because jet travel had not been invented. Otherwise, you would have claimed that also.
That also correct. In 1886, most of America passed prohibition legislations and Atlanta followed suit. Okay. This put Pemberton under a bit of pressure because his concoction had wine. So he was under pressure to make a non alcoholic version. So he
Mm-hmm.
kind of, created this one drink for the temperance movement. He replaced the wine with bags and bags of sugar. He also
Mm-hmm.
added synthetic caffeine, vanilla, lemon, orange extract, nutmeg, coriander extract, and made this thing he called the Coca Cola temperance drink. Okay. That time the cola was with a K. So his
Mm-hmm.
buddy and his bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, said that you have to do one thing, change it to two C's. Okay. And
Hmm.
he was an expert at marketing and advertising. His friend, this Frank Robinson, very passionate about it. Two things he said. He said, change the name to Coca Cola with two C's and use something called the Spencerian script, which was the most widely used script in the mid 19th century to draw out your logo. Okay.
Which is cursive writing,
Which
basically.
is cursive writing. But I like the name Spencerian script.
These bookkeepers are the brains behind the operation. Even in McDonald's, it was the bookkeeper guy who told him to convert the business to uh, land leasing and selling
Yes,
this
that's
one.
right. Great callback to the McDonald's story. Eventually, something very strange happened. Unfortunately, Pemberton was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Okay.
Ouch.
So then he figured out that he can't really take Coca-Cola to the next level. He tried to sell out Coca-Cola and gave one third of the shares to his son Charles Pemberton, who also, by the way, became a morphine addict himself. But later on, enough about him, and I'll come back to him. In the middle of all this transferring of ownership to Charles and a couple of others, this really enterprising dude called Asa Candler rather, comes out of nowhere. And Frank, in his attempt to sell it to a lot of good smart people, tries to pitch him a little bit about Coca-Cola. This guy's completely swayed, okay, and he buys the rights to the formula and the name. But this guy, Asa Candler, took it to the next level. Apparently, he bought the entire company when John died in 1888 at his funeral. He kind of pitched it to his
Oh.
wife, saying that Dekh tere son se hone nahi wala hai. He's also a morphine addict. I will uphold the legacy of your husband. And the Coca-Cola company was hence born. The next fillip to the story of Coca-Cola was in 1899. Okay, there were these
Hmm.
two lawyers named Joseph Whitehead and Benjamin Thomas from Chattanooga, Tennessee. They did something that took this brand to the next level. You want to give it a guess?
They bottled it, huh?
Yes. So they proposed the idea of bottling, and they were so persuasive that Candler signed a contract giving them the control of procedure for only $1. Candler was like, "This is not going to work. I don't care. Do whatever you want as long as I'm paid for the syrup But I think soda fountains is the way forward. If you guys think bottling works, then go ahead and try it. It's an upside for me. There's no downside. So yeah, these guys went and bottled it. The first bottle that they designed was something called a Hutchinson bottle. So I think these Hutchinson bottles are now back in vogue. They are these glass bottles with a wire and rubber stopper. Always in the fridge
Ah,
we
yeah,
keep
yeah,
these
yeah.
bottles. So that's where the Coke was available in form, and that rubber stopper would make a like a
Pop.
pop noise, right? And that's how the word soda pop is invented. Fun fact. And
Oh,
also, when you say
cool.
now it's 10 cents a pop, I think this is
Mm-hmm.
what they mean. But
Oh,
anyway, the Hutchinson bottle couldn't be scaled because it couldn't be sanitized.
okay.
You had to clean the bottle properly and put a bottle cap, because that time the bottle cap wasn't
Uh-huh.
invented. Okay. Eventually, the bottle kept on graduating designs, and I think in 1915, the Root Glass Company of Indiana, under this designer called Earl Dean, created what we call the contour bottle. So that bottle plus the formula plus general demand increasing just set the stage for them conquering the world. Very interesting story about how they conquered the world. This dude called Ernest Woodruff, and this is a very important and interesting part of the story. Okay, Ernest Woodruff took the company public, really started mass production, and his son Robert Woodruff was like the brainchild of Coca-Cola, almost why it's now so popular in the world. So he was a marketing genius. Under his leadership, for the starters, they removed cocaine from the ingredients. So till 1928, cocaine was pretty much there. So instead of using the extract from the coca plant, what they did is in the cocaine production, after the cocaine was produced, the extracted leaf was used in Coca Cola, which just makes you wonder
Okay.
where did all that cocaine go. Even today, in their formulation, apparently the decocained coca leaf is used. That means, imagine, bro, how much cocaine is being produced in the world. But yeah, so this guy removed cocaine. He went and he invented these metal top caps which are so iconic. He started the fountain branding, and he created an association with sports, much like your friends at Red Bull. But the other fillip in really exploding it globally was during the war. Okay, so during the World War, sugar was rationed. These guys at Coca-Cola, especially Woodruff and all, were like really concerned कि how will we production will be curtailed because sugar ही है इसमें और कुछ है नहीं. So they did something really smart. Okay, they did some jugaad and they classified Coke, believe it or not, as a wartime essential. So sugar was exempt for Coke.
Coke.
Okay. And that time they really wanted to associate it with nationalist pride. So during the war, every single American GI were could buy a bottle of Coca-Cola under 5 cents. It came at a loss to the company. But just think how smart this step from Woodruff was. It just planted the seeds of European expansion. So once this Eisenhower went to meet his troops during the war and said, "What do you want to boost your morale?" They're like, "We want cigarettes, we want candy, and we want Coca Cola." Immediately, Eisenhower wrote to the company and asked for mobile bottling. And this was the entry of globalization of Coke and to see where it has reached. Right? The rest is history. And today, it is, like I said, the second most recognized brand in the world. Some cool facts about Coke to end this fun episode. So altogether, Ronnie, around 1.7 billion servings of Coke products are consumed every day.
Every day.
Every day. I can't wrap my head around that.
So by Coke products, you is it only the Coca-Cola black
This
drink
is
or does Fanta and
no, no,
Sprite
no.
also come into
Coke
this?
products. Coke.
Okay.
Insane, right?
Wow.
Like, of course, it depends on
Yeah.
what you classify as a serving, but still. Another fun
Huh.
fact is the modern day Santa Claus, this really jolly, pudgy man in a red suit, was Coke's advertising genius. Before this, Santa was like a lean man in a brown green suit, slightly older than what he even was.
He was your average homeless man
Average
earlier.
homeless man was slightly coked out. Don, what I'm going to ask you next for this cool fact is, can you name the five highest per consumption consumption per capita countries of Coke in the world.
I'm sure the USA is there.
USA is number 4.
Must be some small country
So it's
with.
only one small country. No. So number 5 is Argentina.
Okay.
Number 4 is the USA.
Hmm.
Number 3 is Panama, which is the small country I was talking about.
Huh.
Number 2 is Chile. And number 1 is Mexico, which is also the
Mexico.
top 2 most obese countries in the world. And the southernmost and poorest state of Mexico, they
Huh.
have the highest consumption per capita at 2.2 liters per day
My God.
per capita. And there's this really nice Drew Binsky who's like this YouTube traveler around the world. His video, and we'll link it in the show notes. A small little 5-minute documentary of sorts about these people who consume 2.2 liters of Coke per day.
Wow.
Insane.
Yeah, and it was the Mexican government that put a sin tax on the sugar content in snack foods
Really?
and Coke and
I'm
all.
unaware of this. They better do it because they have a massive obesity problem.
They did. And Mexican Coke apparently is a thing where in Coca Cola in Mexico, Coca Cola
Hmm.
manufactured in Mexico, they use
Hmm.
plain sugar. Coca Cola manufactured in the USA,
Oh, yeah, correct. Cane sugar versus corn sugar. Cane syrup versus corn syrup. Yeah, correct.
the original Mexican cane sugar tastes, Coke tastes a lot better than the
Better, does it?
American version or something, is what people say.
Great. The average Mexican apparently drinks more Coke than the average American, British, Indian, and Chinese combined.
Indian and Chinese, I'm sure, are not adding too much to this number.
Hey, one more cool question I'll ask you. Can you name me 2 countries currently where Coke is banned?
Huh.
It used to be banned in Burma. Call back to our previous episode on history of conflicts in Burma, China and Vietnam due to embargoes. But can you tell me the 2 countries now?
The Vatican, the Pope does not like Coke. And
The
Cuba.
Coke does. Cuba is right.
I have no
Again,
idea.
because of a trade embargo, and North Korea because North Korea.
Okay.
So,
Hey, was it Coke that no, I think it was Pepsi. During the Cold War, it was Pepsi. So Pepsi apparently sold a lot of Pepsi to the USSR, but they couldn't take money from the USSR. The USSR gave them tanks and military equipment. So Pepsi had an army because of the sales that they made.
that's the cool story of Coke. It's one of my favorite origin stories of a corporation, just about how this morphine addicted pharmacist turned war veteran created a concoction that was taken to the next level just because of bottling and set the ground rules for advertising for years and centuries to come. So, brilliant story. But kids, if you're listening, stay away from Coke. It's not good for you. As Cristiano Ronaldo hinted in his press conference, agua.
Righto. So with that, guys, I think we come to the end of this episode. We hope you had fun listening to the origin stories of some beverage companies. We'll be back with more in a bunch of episodes soon. Do send in your feedback, your suggestions for future episodes to surfacescratchers@gmail.com, and do also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.